Per reports, the Pittsburgh Steelers have just signed one of the fastest deep threat wide receivers in the entire NFL. So, the Pittsburgh Steelers have signed former Green Bay Packer and teammate of Aaron Rodgers, wide receiver Marquez Valdes-Scantling. But first, before I get more into this, however, and what this does for the team and how it doesn't really make sense, make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn notifications for everything Pittsburgh Steelers news and updates. Also, like this video. Now, let's get right into it. So, the Pittsburgh Steelers are signing wide receiver Marquez Valdes-Scantling after hosting him for a workout earlier yesterday. So, the Pittsburgh Steelers add the former Green Bay Packers teammate of Aaron Rodgers and someone who he has a close relationship with on the football field. Marquez Valdes-Scantling, he spent 4 seasons with the Green Bay Packers and Aaron Rodgers, and he caught 13 pass touchdowns from Rodgers. So he's being added to the team for depth reasons and to fill a wide receiver role in which Scotty Miller leaves because of his broken finger. So Scotty Miller does have a broken finger. He got that repaired and he missed last week's game and was inactive because of the injury. And who knows how much longer he'll be out. So the Pittsburgh Steelers needed to add a wide receiver to the room, and Valdes-Scantling is the person they chose. So, when looking at this decision to sign him, this is either going to mean one or two things. He's either going to have a big role on this team because he was teammates with Rodgers, and Rodgers is used to his play style and things of that nature, and he can be that deep threat and just big target at the wide receiver position next to DK Metcalf. Or this is going to be like one of the situations like last season, when the Pittsburgh Steelers brought in Mike Williams at the wide receiver spot. Someone with speed, someone who's a big target, and someone who has big catch ability. But then just don't play him because they have other players who they want to play instead, or they don't feel comfortable playing him in a huge role. And it's going to be one of those situations. It's going to be one of those two situations, but we're going to have to wait and see which one it is. So, when looking at this signing, he will start off most likely on the practice squad, but that visit with the Steelers went well and he's signing with the team, meaning that he will probably end up getting elevated to the main roster almost immediately from the practice squad. But right now he's probably going to sign with the practice squad just so Scotty Miller has time to see if he heals or not. So, when the Pittsburgh Steelers were looking at wide receivers this offseason, Valdes-Scantling was a player they looked at. He almost signed with the Steelers ahead of the season. It was either the Steelers or the San Francisco 49ers, but then he opted for the 49ers instead, which honestly really did not make sense because the 49ers already had top wide receivers on their team in terms of Jennings. They have Ricky Pearsall. They have Kendrick Bourne. They have Ayuk, who's going to eventually come back. So it really didn't make sense to why he went to the 49ers instead of the Steelers, even though Steelers really only had DK Metcalf at the wide receiver spot, and then the rest of the wide receiver spots are open for him to actually get playing time. So it didn't make sense why he went to the 49ers. He ended up getting released from the team. He really did not have a consistent role for them. He struggled to find consistency in terms of even getting playing time. He finished with 4 catches for 40 yards in 4 games before going on IR with calf injury and was later waived and injured. So the Pittsburgh Steelers have decided to pick him up, and when you look at this addition to the team, I'm saying he's one of the fastest deep threats in the entire NFL. And he was and kind of is still, but doesn't play that role anymore, or hasn't been given that role since. He played it in Green Bay, was a deep threat, could create separation on deep routes, and was a speeder. And then you look at what he did with the Saints when he was on their team. He was a deep threat, and he was a speed guy. And he played that role for them as well. So he is a good deep threat and speed guy, and the Pittsburgh Steelers kind of need that. Is he going to play that role for the Steelers and get those many chances as he got with those other teams? Probably not, but that's what he does. And that's what he's done with Aaron Rodgers in the past. So do I believe that he's going to come in and make a huge impact on this team and be that number 2 wide receiver for the Pittsburgh Steelers? Hopefully not, because if that's the case, if you're going to give a guy the number 2 wide receiver role coming in just because of his relationship with Aaron Rodgers, and he has no production this season in terms of actually doing well, it just wouldn't make sense. I would rather you stick it out with Kelvin Austin and stick it out with Rowan Wilson, who just had his best 2 games back to back in a row. So the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to give a role to MVS, but then not give it to those guys who've earned it. It just wouldn't make sense. So I hope he doesn't come in and ruin Roman Wilson's shot, in which he's actually starting to produce now. So that would be a shame. But do I think he's going to come in and have that role? No. I hope not. And I just don't think they will. I think it's more so of a security blanket of, hey, if we have injuries, we have someone who we trust, who has been with Aaron, has been there, done that in terms of putting in production with him, and who Aaron's used to. That's why all the talk is going around with Alan Lazard. Maybe the Steelers train for him. But even Alan Lazard, is he really a good enough wide receiver to come in and take over the number 2 receiver role right away if he comes here? Probably not. You would just give him that role because of the relationship with Aaron Rodgers. So this signing is purely for depth reasons, I believe, and purely because of, hey, we know what you could do. We've seen what you did in the past, and hopefully you could replicate that for us in a given role here and there in certain situations. You have to remember, there was certain situations last season where the Pittsburgh Steelers would play Scotty Miller on certain downs and have him be a certain blocker, a certain route runner in specific situations. And maybe that's a role that Marquez Valdes-Scantling can play, where if they're going to take a deep shot, they put him in the game to run a deep route, and he runs certain routes in which he's really good at. So the Pittsburgh Steelers also might use him as a blocker because he's a big wide receiver. Who knows what they do, because Scotty Miller was one of their blocking wide receivers, even though he was a little guy. So MVS has signed with the Pittsburgh Steelers, and we'll have to wait and see what he could actually do for this offense. When looking at what he did with the Green Bay Packers from 2018 to 2021, it's a period in which he totaled 97 receptions for 1,723 yards. That's a big yard kind of difference between receptions. When you look at usually people who put up 100 catches, maybe it's 1,300 yards, but no, he put up 1,700. That means that his yards per catch is elite, and that goes back to what I'm saying. He's a deep threat, and he's a speedster. He breaks away when he's open, when he catches the ball because of his speed. So that's why his yards per catch is so good. And also he tallied in 10 touchdowns in 59 regular season games. His most productive season came with Rodgers in 2020 when he caught 33 passes for 690 yards and 6 touchdowns, while leading the NFL with 20.9 yards per reception. So like I said, speed is what creates that yards per reception. He also showed off his ability to stretch the field last season with the New Orleans Saints when he put up 385 yards on only 17 receptions. So the Pittsburgh Steelers, they get a guy in Marquez Valdes-Scantling who can be a difference maker in a given role. Can he be the number 2 receiver? No. If this is the player the Pittsburgh Steelers are planning on bringing in and think they're done at the wide receiver room in terms of adding at the deadline, then they have a different thing coming, because he's definitely not that guy in terms of someone you trade for, someone you bring in to be the number 2 receiver. He's signing with the practice squad first for a reason, and then signing right away to the roster. If he was really, really good, they would sign him to the roster immediately because they would be afraid of someone else picking him up. But he really only had 2 options in the offseason. He chose the 49ers, got released, and now he ends up with the Steelers, a team that wanted him straight from the beginning. Anyway, this is the end of this video, but let me know your thoughts down in the comments below on the signing of Marquez Valdes-Scantling. What do you think he could bring to the team? And do you think, like I think, that he's only here because of the relationship with Aaron Rodgers and the Steelers looking for a speedster and depth reasons because of injuries at the wide receiver spots? Also, you have to realize that Calvin Austin has been dealing with an injury. He just came back, but you really never know who's going to get injured on any given week. So, let me know your thoughts on this signing. Do you think he can make an impact on this team? Would you still add to the wide receiver spots? The whole topic about wide receiver, drop your comment down below. And also, make sure you subscribe to this channel and turn notifications for everything Pittsburgh Steelers news, updates, highlights, analysis reports, everything surrounding your Pittsburgh Steelers, this football team. I have you covered all season long, no matter what the news is. So you want to stay tuned for the best spot for your updates, and subscribe, like the video, share the video, and until the next video tomorrow, that's it for me. I'll see you guys all later. I'm out. Peace.